No one fights like Gaston, no one draws like Gaston, no one gathers coins, vanquishes peace like Gaston.
As a miniature, yes, I'm intimidating.
The Target exclusive is bronze.
Hey everybody, what is up? My name is Mackenzie.
And I'm Jonathan.
We are husband and wife, and together we are TerreDice Games.
And today we've got for you Prospero Hall's latest Disney Villainous expansion, Despicable Plots.
Now, if you've been on this channel before, you might know that we are a little bit of fans of Villainous.
What? We might have mentioned it like, what, once or twice, maybe?
Next on our list is Villainous.
Next up on our list is Disney Villainous. Okay, so you guys know we love Villainous. Now, we were very excited to see how the villains from this expansion lived up to the villains that came before it.
And to be honest, one of these villains we really didn't like, but more on that later. And for those that don't know, Villainous is a strategic card game where you take on the role of a Disney villain. Except this time, you have a chance to win. Unfold your evil plot and become the most villainous. Thwarting the other players would take that dex of heroes from their world. Previous expansions introduced 3 new characters, bringing us newer hits like Scar, Cruella de Vil, and Yzma, and also some unexpected characters that aren't normally in Disney's IP, like Ratigan and Pete.
Yeah, and this time we've got the muscular egomaniac Gaston, and it's also backed up by Lady Tremaine from Cinderella and the Horn King from Black Cauldron. Now what we've got for you today is the Target exclusive version, which the only 2 differences are we've got this blue sleeve around the box, and we have a bronze Gaston miniature. Now, before we dive into the box, let's judge a book by its cover a bit. So this is the 5th box, and it is this yellow color, which is really close to the orange they used for Evil Comes Prepared. And the yellow is also like crazy close to the Marvel Villainous cover. So we thought that was kind of a weird pick for the color choice. Now the blue is gorgeous.
But with the blue, in order to be able to get into the game, you're gonna have to take this blue sleeve off. And it is a tad difficult to take off.
You can push or pull?
All right,
What do you want?
I'll
Okay.
push.
Oh, okay. there
Oh,
goes.
no,
Push,
I'm
push.
pushing.
There we go. Got it.
Okay, so this was a lot easier because we have taken this off a bunch this week playtesting this game, but the first time we had to take this thing off, we thought we were gonna have to cut into it. We were yanking it. And what were you saying on like, well, not yanking, it was like doing surgery trying to get this out without ripping it. And what were they saying on Dice Tower?
There were several posts a day on the Dice Tower Facebook group asking for tips on how to take off the sleeve without ripping it.
Yeah, so it's gonna take some working to get into it if you wanna keep this blue sleeve on. Okay, now that we have the cover off, let's dive into the game. Lady Tremaine is one of the most interesting villains out of the 3. Her goal is to dress up Gisela or Anastasia in ball gowns, get an invitation to the ball, march them to the ballroom, meeting the prince and ringing the wedding bells, making sure to trap Cinderella and her friends at home as to avoid interference. If Cinderella's glass slippers are found, she must destroy them before she can marry off a daughter to the prince.
Now, as with every Villainous expansion, we have new mechanics. So Lady Tremaine introduces a few new mechanics, particularly she has cards that replace other cards on her board. So before she can play Ball Gown Gisela or Anastasia, she has to play these regular Gisela or Anastasia cards that get swapped out later in the game. And she also depends on a lot of activation, but she doesn't actually have access to any activate actions until the ball begins, until that ballroom is unlocked, which leaves you feeling kind of constrained and powerless in ways. She also does not have any vanquish actions, so she does have the ability to defeat heroes with 1 card that will reveal both the slippers and cause some pain. But the biggest way that she is going to get rid of heroes is she traps them. So she has these traps that allows her to move them somewhere else and trap them, which puts a token over their card, making them useless, disabling their power, other than the fact that they're still blocking that location. So she really depends on trapping heroes.
Overall, I really enjoyed Lady Tremaine. Like, I think she's one of my new favorites. Like, out of all the villains, she's moved into the lineup. Like, her theming is on point, and the complexity of like her character is really great. But one thing I would say is she gets a lot of heroes. Like when she's faded, a lot of heroes are gone. And since those vanquish actions can't be done, you end up most of the time not being able to perform all 4 actions each turn like you usually want to do. You usually end up doing 2. Like it's very hard to do that. So I just felt like that was a little difficult to do.
Yeah, and Lady Tremaine was not the only character in this expansion that had that issue where you were constrained. I found myself with most of these characters doing less than 4 actions every turn.
Yeah, and I don't feel like that was really common with the other villains, so that's like an interesting thing in here. You aren't going to be doing those typical 4 action moves.
Yeah, definitely. One downside to this whole new card thing where you replace cards is that it is possible to have a hand of cards that are just completely useless to you. So before you play Drizella, you have to, if you have the ball gown Drizella, or after you play ball gown Drizella, if you get the Drizella card back, like, they're useless to you. So I started the game with 4 useless cards, and I could not play a single card. So thank goodness for discard actions.
Now let's go on to Horn King.
Alright, and next up is the Horned King from the Black Cauldron. Now, what a cool and random character to include in Villainous. I love how deep they dig for some of these characters. And last week we actually watched the movie The Black Cauldron. Has anyone seen that before? It's interesting. But side note, am I the only one who thinks that Andy Serkis got his Gollum impression from Gurgi in The Black Cauldron? I can't be the only one. Come on, comment below.
He totally did.
Oh, poor miserable Gurgi deserves fierce smackings and whackings on his poor tender head.
But the Horned King is definitely a villain, and he's got an evil plot to hatch.
The Horned King's objective is to collect the bones of ancient soldiers, and like the ball gowns, swap them out for Cauldronborn, having one at each location. Cauldronborn can only be played once he's found and activated the Black Cauldron. Gurgi can sacrifice himself, flipping the Black Cauldron tile and causing the Horned King to lose a precious Cauldronborn each turn. The Cauldronborn are a unique ally, and that they have 6 strength, and they are not discarded when they are used to vanquish heroes. This makes them very strong, but there's an incentive to leave them out until the end, since you could lose them all to the power of the Cauldron.
Now, the Horned King is a good villain who introduces new mechanics, like the Black Cauldron and the way you have these unvanquishable allies who can just continue to fight for you. And it also reuses the replaced cards from the Lady Tremaine deck. Now, on the other side, though, his Fate deck is very vanilla. It's just very kind of what we've been used to with other Fate decks. Nothing really new there. Making him a good villain to have. He's totally good, but not super interesting or new. Now, he does have the coolest miniature in the whole set. His might be the coolest Disney villainous miniature that exists. It's awesome. But other than that, you know, he's solid B+, I think.
But I would like to say, for what they had to do with the theming of the movie, if you hadn't seen it, go watch it. I think this game, in my opinion, is an up from the movie.
That's right.
I think it's an up.
And the theming is still very good. It's the characters really good.
Yeah.
We're talking about like the gold standard Villainous at this point because we have so much content to go on.
But I love seeing unique IP in there, so great for that. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for, Gaston. Now, if you saw from the beginning of the video, we didn't like one of these, and unfortunately, Gaston fit that bill, and we're gonna tell you why. Gaston's objective is to remove 8 obstacles that stand in his way. What are these obstacles? Unclear. Gaston works to remove the obstacles from each location, which get added back frequently by his Fate deck, often bringing him close to square one. A big part of his ally deck are actually the wolves in the forest, which he never interacts with in the movie, but the art is great. If Belle gets in the way, he vanquishes her swiftly. She has a strength of 2. Which is done actually really well with LeFou, who introduces a new mechanic. If LeFou is at the location used in a vanquish action, any allies that would be discarded instead are returned to your hand. So that part is cool.
Yeah, so what did we like about Gaston? So his cards, his art, very thematic, beautiful cards. They look really nice. He's got, I love some of the titles of the cards, like Time to Follow Me. He's got the torch, he's going. And the Swoon card, it's got these ladies going, ah. And they actually will add an obstacle back at the expense of being able to draw new cards.
Yeah,
which,
that part was cool.
Interesting thing about drawing new cards, all 3 of these villains can actually overdraw. So you can get like 6 or more cards in your hand at the end of your turn with all 3 of these villains, which I think is kind of an interesting thing that didn't get done a whole lot before this expansion.
Yeah, definitely.
And LeFou, he's new. He's sort of the henchman in this one. If he is at the space that's being used to vanquish, whoever is used in that vanquish action goes back to your hand instead of to the discard pile.
Yeah, so that part with LeFou is cool, but my problem with it is that the theming did not go very in-depth. Like, it's very surface, not even really, like, it just didn't really go anywhere, and he is so easy to learn, which can
That's not a negative. Yeah.
No, it's not a negative, which I'm saying it may be a good thing. Like, get away all obstacles. I would definitely recommend Gaston to a player that is brand new, like that you're trying to get in and they're a little nervous. Give them Gaston. Like, I used to give people Prince John, but he's easier than Prince John. Like, give them Gaston. They'll be okay.
Now, about the simplicity, though, of his action, so he's got to remove these 8 obstacles, and he can do it pretty quick. But what ends up happening is they just get added back by his fate deck over and over again. So you end up back at square one in the game several times. You end up literally right back where you started, which means that he can also win very quickly. So he just constantly has to get fated from what we can see.
Yeah, my problem is a lot of the other characters in this, and especially the newer ones, we've expected for a plot, a theme, for you to change things up as you go, but you will do the same thing the entire game with him. Like, nothing changes.
Yeah, that's right. And it doesn't really feel like you're playing Gaston. It doesn't feel like you're following his desires and like what he would do as a character, which a lot of the others you do, especially now. They've really gotten thematic.
Yeah, we were actually discussing like what would we do, and you had a really good idea. Do you want to tell us?
I thought that, they had this angry mob card, and it made me think the whole thing could have been about convincing the town that Beast was a problem and that, you could have gotten Belle in the end that way. And maybe what happens was the townspeople all started as heroes, and you could pull them down to the ally side, and you could combine them as an angry mob, and the mob could move together. So you could move the whole mob to the castle, and once you get a big enough mob outside the castle, the Beast is unveiled, and you defeat him through some cards.
Kill the Beast!
Yeah.
Kill the Beast!
Yeah, but it rubbed me the wrong way that it's like, oh, Belle's out, let's vanquish her, because why?
Yeah, why is she a strength of 2? Why? Why is Bella strength of 2?
All right, now overall, this was a good expansion. It was not knock it out of the park, but we've come to expect so much from Villainous that it still really is that good Villainous game that we've come to know and love. So definitely worth completing your collection.
Yeah, and I really like Lady Tremaine and Horn King, so we'll be definitely bringing out those again to play with the other villains.
Also, the new mechanics are fun. So I love the non-vanquishable allies and the returned allies to your hands. I love being able to draw up your hands. Now, that overdraw was sort of a patch on the fact that you get these stale, useless hands sometimes where you've got a ton of cards that are just not usable. But it's a minor problem, and I really applaud them continuing to find new mechanics that build on the base game without actually introducing any new actions this time. So really good.
Yeah, and the fact that they all work together, like there are so many now. Like, it's really cool. So big props to Prospero Hall continuing to pump out all these Villainous expansions. All the Disney lovers out there, we love it.
Next, I would love to see Claude Frollo from Hunchback of Notre Dame. Please make it happen.
Yeah, please let us know. Also, you guys, tell us down below, who would you like to be in the next Disney Villainous expansion? We don't know if there's going to be one, but let us know down below who you would like to see in it.
This has been Disney Villainous's Despicable Plots expansion. If you like what you see, please subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, comment below telling us what villain you would like to see in the game, if there are any left.
Also, we have an Instagram, TerreDice Game, so follow us on there to see any behind-the-scene footage with board game fun.
Yes.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Happy playing!